everyone. Welcome to another episode of Out on a Limb podcast, where we're going to talk about everything.
Everything? That's going to be a long podcast.
Lots of stuff, put it that way.
Selective everythings.
A few weeks ago, we did what we called a stream of consciousness, because sometimes there's just a lot of things that come into our awareness through channelings and clients and things like that. And it's not enough for a whole episode, but it's a lot of updates and just different tidbits that we want to share with you guys. Yeah. So we thought streams of consciousness every now and then are good ideas.
I think they're fun.
Right? Yeah. It is fun. I have a lot of things come into my awareness. I'm like, I want to share that with my tribe. Audience, with our tribe. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and let us know what you think about it. Cause I honestly think we should be doing this like once a month,
more often.
More often.
Do you like the streams of consciousness? Because there's a lot of information we want to convey to you, and things are, as Ferris Bueller says, things are moving really fast. You got to keep up.
That's right.
I don't think he said it exactly.
No, he didn't.
But close.
But you know what I mean.
We're hanging with it.
You got to stop and look around every now and then, he says.
Yeah,
okay. So, stream of consciousness part 2.
Wow. Okay.
I don't have a board.
The board. We're in.
Not take 2, part 2.
Part 2.
Okay.
All right.
So what you were saying, Samantha, as we were in break, the synchronicities. All right. So you need to have discernment when you're listening to anybody, us, anyone, any spiritual leader, teacher, anybody out there. Use your discernment to decide if it's for you. However, have you ever noticed when you're listening to somebody and you're like, I don't know about that. I'm not sure if that resonates with me. But then all of a sudden, the next day or the same day, you'll hear it again from somebody else that's completely unrelated. Is that what you were talking about?
Yep. Totally different.
So that happens to you a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And do you find that it comes in 3s or 2s, or how many times does it take for you to go, hey,
now that's interesting. I hadn't even.
Right.
No, I find that once something gets into my awareness, however it happens, and I'm trying to think how this occurred, but it was like, I think it was because of the Thursday night, the monthly channeling, and we were talking about energy. And then, and also one of our friends, Chris, was talking about going to listen to this guy, Lee Harris, speak.
He's coming locally, kind of locally, 3 hours away.
Yeah, to the South Carolina area, yeah.
He's coming. No, Asheville, North Carolina in June. So now that we've said all that, he's coming in June. Anyway, and I hadn't listened to him. Like everyone's been talking about him. I haven't listened to him. So I just decide on my way up here, I'm going to just tune him in like the last 20 minutes of my drive. And he's talking about stuff that you guys were channeling about, and some stuff that was like really specific to me. And so I just find that, so I guess when I was bringing this up, what I was talking about is how you have your discernment. You hear things and you have your discernment. You say, okay, does this feel right to me? And I've learned through my journey that I always have a healthy dose of skepticism, unless I'm physically experiencing it. If someone else is talking about it, I take it in, I let it resonate with me or not, whatever. And if I find, ooh, this is exciting, then I have that healthy dose of skepticism. And it's like, I wait to see, because I know it'll happen, if other information will come across, and then what ends up happening, or I will go out and look for it. But generally what happens, I'll just go to YouTube and it just pops right up, something very different or whatever. And it'll be along the same lines, covering some of the same topics. And there's like an intersection point. There's just like, it's like this nexus of information. And so I always tell my clients that when I'm telling them stuff, I'll say to them, I've experienced this, or there is this matrix of information that there's enough that has built up that I feel confident in sharing this. But it's if it resonates with them, because we can't know. Right. Well, okay. Strike that. Yes, we can know everything. We do know everything, but it's what is applicable to our current experience that we're being, opened up to, shown, living through, whatever. And so I just found it really interesting, because he was talking about, the energies coming in, and everybody's talking about, 2024, what's going to happen. And what was interesting is in 2023, a lot of people would skip over and talk about 2025. They didn't really want to talk about 2024.
Like it got wiped off the map.
And so I kept going
and get through that one.
And that was like 3 different sources that kind of just kept brushing past 2024.
Wow.
And now that we're into 2024, like everyone's diving in deep. And, and the reason why they didn't, I guess, want to talk about it is they didn't want everybody kind of resisting or shifting their plans or whatever. It's like, you got to continue living, you got to live your life, but everyone's talking about, and even if you're not aware of all the energy that's going on around you, the shifts going on in the earth, so it's going to be unexplainable why certain events are happening to you, but there's so much going on with just the earth vibration shifting, relationships shifting, perceptions shifting, how you see the world, how you're experiencing can change so dramatically from month to month. Not because
day
of
to day.
day
to
right.
day.
And it's getting crazy on a global scale. So it just, and I find validation in that, like it's comforting. Maybe it's because I'm pulling that information to validate what I think the experience is, but it's
in some way.
Thing.
I mean, think of it when you talked about, how, you were introduced to some information, and then next thing you know, you pull up YouTube and it's the first thing there, right? Well, it's think about the algorithm of our reality.
Ooh.
Right, the more you throw into that algorithm, it begins to build a pattern of going, oh well, that's where her energy is focused right now, so we're going to throw some more at her and throw some more at her.
Interesting way to think about that.
I know. Well done.
Algorithm of the universe.
Pulled that one out of. Well, but I noticed that, like, my friend Diana and I talk about it all the time, how we'll just wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm going to have a dose of Abraham Hicks, and it's all these content creators who are pulling little snippets, and it doesn't matter what you put on is the most valuable thing you'll hear that day. It's like, that was meant for you.
It's pulling that perfect oracle card at that moment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we were going to talk about. And then we said, we're not. So
what shall we talk about? Okay.
Yes.
I want to talk about walk-ins.
All right.
Because something came into my awareness on the February monthly channeling.
This past,
You can hear the whole thing from the collective if you go back to the February monthly channeling message from the collective. But for those who aren't familiar with walk-ins, because we may have briefed over that in some point in the past year, sometimes if a soul has a viable body, but the soul, for whatever reason, cannot fulfill the mission, the original contract, then they'll do a swap. Both souls have to agree. And so the current soul will go out, the new soul will come in and fulfill the rest of the mission.
Would you say that's because, and this is more education for the audience than it is for myself, because we've talked about this at length, but is it more because the soul that is in the body just doesn't have this, I don't want to say strength, because that means you've got a weak soul.
Maybe they don't have the knowledge to finish the job.
It could be a variety of reasons, but for whatever reason, it just does not feel that it can continue on, or maybe it doesn't want to, or whatever. So there's another soul that might be prepared for whatever is coming, or whatever the mission is. Maybe circumstances.
Timeline shifted that it needed an upgrade. Yeah. For that particular individual, or that soul contract.
So somebody asked in the monthly channeling, hey, can animals have walk-ins?
Yeah.
And I thought that's interesting. Because, and what the collective said was that animals don't have a mission per se. So yes, animals can have a walk-in, but it's for a different reason, because there is no mission. I mean, sometimes we'll ask, what is your assignment with your caretaker, with your human? And they'll tell us, I'm there to be a comfort or unconditional love or patience or something like that. But it's not like
the world.
Not like, I have to do something. And so they were saying that it's an instantaneous switch over, but the difference is, and I know why. I was trying to think why they would do it. They do it because that soul is actually needed elsewhere. So it's not a matter of the animal's body can't continue with that soul. It's about, hey, that soul is real experienced and has information and knowledge. Maybe they've been a dog for lots and lots of lives, so they're really good at being a dog, and they need the expertise on another planet because they're creating dogs on this other planet, whatever it is. Whatever. They have this expertise. They have this, They have this knowledge. So they're like, hey, we need to borrow you for a little bit. So it'll go to this other planet and do a mission. and the new soul will come in instantaneously, and you won't know it. You would not know if you're watching your animal. But the difference is that in a walk-in human situation, the soul does not change back. It stays with that new soul.
Oh, okay.
But in an animal, it comes back again.
Mhm.
So it'll be gone for a certain length of time, and then it comes back.
Oh.
And I said, well, we talk to animals, we channel them. Would I be able to ask, hey, have you ever like left to go on another mission? Have you been a soul walk-in?
Mhm.
And the collective said the animal would not know, would not recognize that.
Hmm.
But see, so are you speaking, when you do the channeling, animal channelings, you're speaking to the soul of that animal, but if you ask that animal's higher self,
Well, we're
do
actually,
animals have higher
That's,
selves?
I mean, in essence,
That's what we're
we're
still
talking
trying
to the higher, we are talking.
in essence, so when
to
I'm
the
connecting to
energetic.
it, that's what when I create the space or the container to do the session for an animal before we even connect to, before we do the session,
Mhm.
I set a container of being able to connect to the full essence, which would be the
It's
higher
the
self,
energetic
right?
essence,
Okay.
which,
Yeah. Which would end up being the higher self of the animal. Yeah.
right.
So it would be, so then I guess I would go to the assumption that it would be, it's just unnecessary information. It's too much to it doesn't need to carry that information
Right.
that it went over and
Right.
assisted or was part of some dynamic.
Did these
Well,
things.
so when you said that, what it made me think of, and stop me if this is, I think this was also part of one of your public channelings about the about the people who go on the missions, the 20,
Oh yeah,
20 year,
20 and
like,
back.
yeah,
Oh.
20 and back, the off earth
Oh.
missions.
Did we talk about it here?
I don't think or wait, did we do that in the
So
stream
20
of
and back, we
conscious,
might
the
have.
other
Yeah,
one?
yeah. Okay.
And so, because they come back and they don't remember that they've done that.
Right.
And they pick right back up. And that's what I was thinking of when you
Right.
talked about the animal,
Interesting. Yeah.
so now you've got to ask, do animals do the 20
20 and back?
Yeah, but it's, what,
Well, it's
what,
kind of like that.
it's a year or it's a very much shorter
Shorter.
period of
Yeah,
time for an
yeah.
animal.
But it is
Um,
kind of like that because they're going off. The example the collective used when I asked for an example was they were going off planet.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So it is pretty much to fulfill something, but it's just not that maybe they've signed up for it and are part of this ongoing thing. Because it was a very constructed, or it was a huge construct, the 20 and back. Whereas
Right,
this
right.
is more just like, we just need to tap your knowledge.
Right. Because animals don't.
Because you're a
sign-
particularly good dolphin. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, right. But animals don't sign contracts anyway. So they wouldn't have designed that like a 20 and back. You would
Yeah.
sign into your contract.
Mm.
But animals don't sign these soul swaps like that in
Interesting.
their contract because they don't have a contract. It's a little
Interesting.
different.
It just makes you ponder. And again, it's not like, I try to explain to people, it's not like I just go, oh, okay, well then that's fact. It's like,
Right.
it's like you just store that into an area of your mind and
try to
wait for
make
their theorems, right? Is that right? Theorems, thesis,
Well,
because they're not, you can't necessarily
I-
prove them 100%, but
Okay,
once
now-
they start building upon one another,
I liken it to like when we talk about this stuff, and I'm with you. I keep a very healthy level of skepticism in everything, right? It's
Mhm.
that's been my nature all my life. But when I do my mediumship work, there's a lot of information that gets flooded in that may not connect to my audience. So I create a table, a little imaginary table, and I place a lot of that over on the table, and I tell my audience, I'm like, look, it may not connect to you now, but I'm going to put it over here because it might come back around. That's similar to a lot of what I take in. I hear a lot of stuff that Allison listens to that she reads back to me or whatever from either my channelings or even what she's listening to on YouTube or wherever. And I look at it and I listen to it. I'm like, nope, we're going to put that over here on the table.
For now.
I don't have the framework to really
exactly. There's nowhere to
understand it.
file it.
Right. I have no place
right.
to file it. But like you said, as it starts to compile, there's layers and layers that start to build up
It's
on
like
it.
a body of evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I drag it back in. I'm like, okay, now this person said that person said that now the picture is becoming clear. That's kind of how I look at things. And then I take the skepticism out of it and go, okay, That's a reality point.
Which is also why when you're watching a spiritual teacher, and if it doesn't resonate, you might not be ready for it. It's not because what they're saying is wrong.
Yep.
You come back to it 3 or 5 years later or something, and it makes sense to you, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the very curious things with so many people having these awakenings, these awarenesses, perceiving the world differently, using these different jargons, believing in, whether it's ETs or that, energy is viable and you can move it or whatever. I totally get why, some people will look at you and just be like, what are you talking about? Because you don't, unless like you have to engage and allow your mind to get stretched and not just go, nope, can't happen. Like you have to have that space, like you're saying, the table or the bookshelf or whatever you want to call it, where you store these artifacts of information so that you allow the possible or the plausible, like, the flat earth, round earth thing. I've grown up seeing pictures of the earth as round, that's my experience and stuff. And, but there've been so many people vehemently saying, no, it's flat. And I'm like, in this modern day, people are actually saying that. How interesting. And so I finally thought, what do I know? I don't know. So I remember asking the collective about it. And the collective was like, like a old sage, Chinese fortune cookie kind of whatever, it is both. It depends on your perception.
Right.
And I'm
Confucius
like, I wanted just to settle that once and for all right then and there. But it made me, it expands your mind that much more, realizing that, if this is a digital perception of reality, blah, 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 like you can just go. I think my first introduction of that was National Lampoon's Animal House, where, the guys were getting high and they're talking about how on the speck of your finger or whatever, there could be a whole universe and stuff. And, so
when did you ask that question at the collective? So if somebody wants to listen back, do you remember? Was that January or December? Was not too long. It might've been further back.
It was like June.
Oh, it was that far?
June or May or something like that. Cause I remember.
So if you want to hear their answer.
Yeah, it
go
was.
Back to messages.
Just know, it's both.
Yeah,
You're going to be left unsatisfied. No, that's not. I know because. Okay, so
you were left unsatisfied.
Allison's like, oh my God, wasn't that answer unbelievable? Like, wasn't that so good? And I'm sitting there going, oh, it was. But it is
true because when you listen to your reality.
When you listen to it, it's like a, mind F. Like it just makes your mind go.
Gotta have your decipher. You gotta have your decipher ring on in order to understand some of it. But
I wanted to get back to your thing real quick about the theorems and stuff, because it's so funny. I like to listen to, my left brain likes to listen to Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, his wife. They're both evolutionary biologists, and they do the Dark Horse podcast.
Dark Horse podcast.
But just a time or two ago, he said, it's a hypothesis. When you have an idea about how something works, it's a hypothesis. Now it becomes a theory at the point at which you've eliminated all other possibilities, all of the other hypotheses you've proven wrong, except for this one thing. And now it's not proven right. It's just not been proven wrong.
That's where the whole thing of you're not wrong.
Right.
People need to learn to say that a lot more.
That's the thing about the flat earth round earth. You can't just throw things out.
Because that's, for one person, that is their
so many realities.
That is their sphere of reality. That you're not
Depends
going
on
to
your perspective.
You're not going to convince them otherwise.
And people literally died for all these different beliefs about whether it was round or where we were in the solar system and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of energy behind a lot of this stuff.
Well, we were talking about contracts, about animal contracts and things like that. But this morning we did a channeling with Archangel
Raziel.
Do we need to stop? Are you tired?
No, I occasionally have to yawn. I'm sorry. My God,
we were boring Will again.
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I yawn.
Okay. Anyhow, Archangel Raziel.
Actually, before we jump into that, did you know, like there might have just been a major truth that hit him, because I
that
know
what it
that
means?
when I'm doing readings with people and I'm hitting on some
Mhm.
major truths, it's like their mind is taking it in and they just sit there like you have to shut down. You have to, just
It's like
relax
it's like
for
a
it
system. Yeah, it's like a system
to
shutdown.
reboot
You
or
know how
something
yawns
like
are
that.
contagious, though. You know how hard it is right now for me not to yawn.
Oh
because
yes,
you guys are
Don't
talking
even
about
talk about it.
Stop talking about it.
But yeah, but that's an actual thing, that when somebody
yeah.
is doing that thing
They're
that we won't
absorbing it
name.
they're absorbing it so deep that the body just has to get to a certain point.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Now, that's not true
Okay.
for all. Yeah.
I'm going to continue now.
Allison's chewing on her lip right now.
I'm going to continue.
For those
Okay.
watching. For those listening
Something
at home.
about contracts. Anybody want to hear about that?
You will. It's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's fascinating. Anyway, Raziel got off on a tangent he said something about contracts, and then I got off on the tangent and took him down a rabbit hole. And I asked him about contracts. And I said, there's a forum I belong to, quantumhealers.com.
Mhm.
Love the forum. And there are people of all stripes, all different modalities, all kinds of stuff. And so we don't always agree on everything. And so there is a little bit of a back and forth about whether you can break a contract. And there are people who believe in the sovereignty and the free will of a human being.
Mhm.
So when they have a client, and this is particularly noticeable when a client has contracted with extraterrestrials to be abducted, what we would call abducted. And in this reality, it's traumatizing for them.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's serious. And so there are practitioners who work with those kinds of clients and understand that they can walk their client through breaking the contract or breaking that part of the contract. And there are others that believe you can't.
Okay.
So I asked, I'm like, can we break our contract? And Raziel said, you cannot break your contract. But what you can do is you can expand because your contract is a pretty wide road. There's a lot of room for variability in how these things happen. Like if you contracted to have a particular lesson or a particular experience, the way that can come about in all kinds of different creative ways. Correct.
Yeah. Or you can go straight there or take a long way around.
Right. So you may have contracted with these extraterrestrials to do whatever they need help with. Well, you can develop a relationship with them such that you can accomplish that goal in a different manner besides having to be taken up.
Like help them abduct someone else.
I don't think that's what they had in mind. But it was like a light bulb. It was like ding, ding, ding. So, if you're working with a client and you thought that you broke the contract, perhaps you just helped them to expand their awareness such that the abduction doesn't need to take place again, or it will take place more gently, or who knows what.
Okay.
So you may have still helped your client and satisfied that, but it wasn't technically breaking the contract.
I really find that interesting because there's people have these hardcore, we live in this world where we believe that it's yes, no, black, white, all that kind of stuff. And it's, and so when we're getting information and our brains are we immediately want to tag it, what is it? Tag it, box it, like bag it or whatever. Yeah. And you can't necessarily just flat out do that. Like maybe it's better when we're asking questions, if, we're asking more of the nuance of the question with the understanding that, I'm not looking for, yes, it's flat or yes, it's round, but and that's what they were trying to explain to me is it's yes or no. It's not yes or no, it's perspective. And so you're saying these contracts, there's a perspective on it.
Yeah.
So from a certain practitioner standpoint, yes, the contract has been broken.
Well, you've helped the client is the bottom line. You've helped achieve the outcome they were looking for.
It's been altered.
Right.
It's been altered. Yeah.
It's just been accomplished in a different way such that it's not traumatic for them anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the goal. You just want to help your client. But I asked, well, what about people who have an NDE, near-death experience? Like I know of one woman that I've read her story and she died. She and God actually changed this. She saw what she interpreted to be changing the contract because she really couldn't come back because her body was deteriorated or whatever. So they changed the contract such that she would come back in, but her new goal was to become this healer. She was going to become this powerful healer. And so they healed her body, and then she became this powerful healer in what she understood was a new contract.
Mhm.
So I said, how does that work then? Did she change her contract? And he said, no, she had a secondary contract. So at the point at which she incarnated, there were 2 contracts made. The first one for the first part of her life, and she would retain that information, all of that conceptual knowledge that would help her in the second part. But she knew she was going to have an NDE at this point, go up, have an NDE, and then the next contract would take effect.
That makes sense.
Taking
to me.
into account everything she'd already been through, right?
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay, but what if she had decided she didn't want to come back and she wants to just stay there with the second contract be null and void?
Mhm.
You mean,
said-
you mean
If she decided not to come
stay,
back.
right, stay transitioned and
Stay
yeah,
transition.
okay,
I said, stay dead.
well,
Did you? I don't think
I
you
think,
did.
no, to Raziel.
Oh,
I told him, I said, what if she just wants to stay dead?
oh my God.
Allison gets very personal when in these conversations.
They're my friends.
Yeah.
So, and he goes, it's very, very rare that would happen because it's your contract and this is what you agreed to do. And they have ways of convincing you, right? Because when you're on the other side, you're like, oh my gosh. And you're looking at your life and you're like, oh my God.
There's unicorns and rainbows and
beautiful. Look
puppy
at all the help
dogs.
and
And
yes.
Big
it's so
marshmallow clouds and-
exciting.
And you feel, because you are an expansive being that can do everything, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
True.
they said, but if that were the case and they agreed to let this person stay with
Sure.
source, then there would be a walk-in
No, see, that makes sense.
to fulfill that second half of the
Just-
contract.
Oh.
That second
Yeah.
contract.
Oh. With
You
that second contract,
Second contract. They would
another
fulfill that
another
second.
soul would
Well,
take it.
well,
and-
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
makes sense because, like, the way I describe it to people, like when we're choosing our lifetimes, it's like we're weaving this incredibly complex tapestry.
Yeah.
And so there are people who are they're hinging what happens next to them or an
Mhm.
aspect of their lives off of that person coming in.
Right.
So
Right,
somebody's
right.
got to step in.
That's a good point.
Yes,
That's a good
yes.
point.
Now there's
It's not just you.
someone I met someone
It's not just about you, Samantha.
okay.
It's about all the relationships.
It's about that beautiful tapestry.
But
Right,
I
right.
think that if I figure it out, then everyone out there will understand.
Well, it's true.
Samantha
That's how I
got it,
felt about the
so,
origin story. I'm
um,
like, I've got to figure this out or I can't explain it to anybody else.
Well, okay. So I met back when this is like the weird stuff that happens to me that when I tell people, oh, I can be a muggle world, and then thinking that this is how normal life goes. And then all of a sudden someone steps in and it's just
Mhm.
like, now I'm in a whole other world. And so I don't remember how I met this person, where I met them. This is when I was in Tampa, Florida, back in the 90s, and met this guy who was like, yeah, I'm a walk-in. And I'm like,
Mm.
how do you know and I didn't really even know what walk-ins were. I was so early in my
Yeah.
spiritual
Yeah.
journey. Now, let's just say huge, healthy, mega dose of skepticism.
You're sure.
Because, he's sitting there going, yeah, I know that I probably have about 2 to 3 more months here because there are people that know what I know and I have to give this information and leave. And so I'm sitting there
Wow.
going, okay, we're talking psychotic escape,
Yeah.
I'm doing all the healthy dose skepticism
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
However, then there's that spiritual nudge of just,
Wait, what about
you
it? Yeah.
need to go and have coffee and talk to this person.
Yeah.
Because the guy was just like, I'll share it with you, like he said, over a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
and then that's it. And the whole time I'm going, and I could be kidnapped. I could be thrown in the back of a van, I'm sitting there going through all of these
Yeah.
things. And yet that push is just like, no, you need to go do this.
Mhm.
And I listen to that nudge. So I go and I sit down in a coffee shop for like 3 to 4 hours. We talk about this stuff. And he was explaining, it's almost like Illuminati kind of thing where it's
Mhm.
like, he's here to deliver certain information. He's here for a specified amount of time. And then he knows he will be like knocked off. Like, that's his exit, his
Interesting.
exit thing.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so he's like, it's okay. I'm okay as long as nobody else knows the stuff that I know. Like he's passed it off to whoever.
Mhm.
He knows he has so much time and then that's going to be it. But he's like, but I'm not doing that. I'm going to let as many people know. And the thing is, I cannot even remember. Like, here's the crazy thing is that we sat there, like I was so fascinated.
Yeah.
I was able to drill him with all these questions. We talked about so many fascinating things. And I know time just went by and I was like, well, I don't remember the context of the conversation.
Oh, really?
Like
you
weren't supposed to remember.
Well, I walked away. Like I remember that encounter. I remember thinking I, could have been killed. I was at a diner, but hey. Still, and all of this information transferred between us. And I remember it like going, well, this is interesting. Well, and again, healthy dose of skepticism the whole way through. And then it's like, that's it. I don't know. If I had sat and written it down, I don't even think I could think. Like my mind was so.
Yeah.
But did you find yourself believing it?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. That's what I'm saying.
At the moment, were you thinking still this is crazy at the moment, or did you walk away thinking?
All I can remember is the person. I can't remember the diner. I have no idea where we
wiped you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there's something.
Oh my gosh!
Look into this.
Yeah, it's
holy cow.
I can't tell you what the outcome of any of it was because I don't like.
Wow.
I remember having the conversation, but I don't, and I know that time passed. And I don't remember, like, I remember cold drinks, like the coffee being cold.
Was he well dressed in a black suit with black sunglasses?
Yeah, really. but the thing is, I know I had the experience, but I don't remember how in the world I would have even encountered this person that I would even begin to have this conversation because I like at the time I was a single mom or going through a divorce, whatever. And like my time was very busy. I didn't have a lot of, I wasn't just hanging out, on the street corner going, let me talk to strangers.
Maybe we can hypnotize you and we can bring it back.
Oh, wouldn't that be
conversation?
Cool?
Yeah, sure.
Or if it's one of those things that, it's more of a, I hate to use this word, but it's the one that comes up. It's more of an implant of information that is to be
you just
triggered,
need it at that moment,
or
maybe you guys will trigger it for me because
or is to be triggered at a later point that is going to really reveal some deeper information about something else.
The only thing that I can recall from it is the understanding that the world is the world, the world leaders, the people in control are not who you think it is.
Yeah.
And that there is so much, I just remember it was like rich, dense information that would be so vitally helpful for humanity and that it was being controlled. And that was part of his thing was to deliver certain information to move things to help, think in terms of the black hats, the white hats.
Right.
If you want to say the Illuminati and whoever, I don't know. I that's a name that just keeps, sure. I can't even grasp around
but this
that.
was even back in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So that was, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, I've got to give this information and then I know I'll be done.
Wow.
And how precious the time was.
Wow.
And then he wanted to talk to me. No, I think it was, but the feeling was almost like we just sort of, like it was just, to me, it felt like just this chance encounter,
but it's really not.
Yeah. That like, why would he get, who am I that, a single mom, like going through what I was going through, why would he give that? What would I even do with that information? So, but I think that's where kind of my distrust, like my realization that the government was not, that things were not as we perceived them to be.
Sure.
And okay, here's something else. Somehow the concept of reptilian, that's when I first
you heard it.
Yeah. So there's something with that too. Then my brain's just going.
See, and that's a whole construct I don't necessarily buy into either. There are good reptilians and bad reptilians. And, they talk about in the origin story, and they've said it many times since then, that they can only suggest. The parameters of Earth are that they can be here, they can suggest, but they can't control. However, if you are in such close contact with a being, whether it be a positive Arcturian or a negative reptilian or whatever, if you're in that deep of connection with that being, what they say can feel like coercion or force. because you just do it.
Right.
But it isn't. It isn't.
It then
Right.
shifts the reality point that you're
So
in.
it's again.
So, but
getting-
okay, what you're saying though, it kind of makes more sense with the encounter that I had,
Mhm.
but I don't know
Right.
what, like, anyway,
To
that
what
would
level,
be
you know?
really
But it's about
interesting.
giving our power away again. And it's the
Mhm.
people that perpetuate this white hat, black hat, the Illuminati, all that kind of stuff. It's like you're perpetuating this us versus them, that there's, this war going on and that we're all doomed because the bad ETs are here. I mean, it's just a whole thing. And you can believe that. I mean, a lot of people need that in their reality for whatever reason. That's the path they decided to pick.
Mhm.
I choose the love path. I choose, something different. I don't,
Mhm.
that's not helpful.
But it
to
doesn't
me.
mean that doesn't exist.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It exists for that reality.
That there's
And
a
that's-
layer. Yeah.
And that is what Raziel said today also. He reinforced kind of what the Venusians said in the book, which is there is no single point of reality. You are a single point of reality, and so are the other 8 billion people.
Yeah.
They're all a single point
The world
of reality.
revolves around all of us.
And they said the galactics are a point of reality. The angelics are a point of reality. The spirit realm is a point of reality. And all of those points of reality are here existing simultaneously with a different perspective.
Mhm.
They all have their own mission, if you will, or contract or purpose or understanding perspective.
So when my mother said that, stop being the center of the universe,
Yeah.
she wasn't really.
You were the center of your own universe.
Right.
See, that's
Yeah.
it.
Right.
You
We all
can't,
are.
you can't stop being what you are.
So you're right. So I don't buy into that, but somebody else, that's their reality. And it's not wrong. Like you
Mhm.
said, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
The other thing he said about contracts this morning, which was funny to me, was he was saying some people, when you make your contract, some humans, it's energetic and you're up there in this energetic space and you're just drawing all of the things together into this contract. It's not like you're writing, oh, I want this and I want that in a
Mhm.
writing form. It's energetically you're drawing everything. And they said because you have free will there too, to make the contract what you want. It's not
Yeah.
just human free will. So you're drawing all this stuff to yourself, a lot of stuff. Like I want to accomplish all these things that are not necessarily great. They're going to be painful, but you're not looking at it that way.
No, because you're an infinite being.
And then you get down into the human body and you're like, the veil comes in and you're like, what the hell did I do? What did I just do?
And the way I describe it is it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
moment you get on it, you're like, oh shit.
Buyer's-
Sometimes
buyer's-
it's fun and sometimes you're just like trying not to hurl and
Buyer's remorse.
yeah.
Right. I said, but I asked him, I'm like, I thought we had guides up there to help us, like this team
This
of
guidance counselor
sitting
going
around-
here. You want to take 101.
they're sitting around
Right.
the table and they're
A.
like, I wouldn't put that in there if I were you. And they're like, you have guides, but they're not really controlling much about it. You're making the decisions.
Okay. Did you ever see Albert Brooks Defending Your Life
No.
with
Mm-mm.
Meryl Streep?
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh, dear God, you guys. Okay, everyone, you have to see that. Defending Your Life. And this is end of life stuff, but it's, Albert Brooks, he's just
Yeah.
the definitive, guilty Jewish man kind of thing, oh my God, I just like never getting it right and all this kind of thing. And so he dies. And they're like trying to send him over into this other line, which doesn't have as good customer service, and all of these other things. Whereas he keeps encountering this one soul, Meryl Streep, who
They're
just
I
like-
may
I've
have
seen
that
clips
actually.
of that.
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
it rings
they're just
a
like,
bell.
oh, what can we bring you? What can we get you? And like she has, her guide that's helping her is so sweet, and they're just taking such good care. And meanwhile, he's having, like the D experience kind of thing. But then how he decides, anyway, I'm not going to.
Give away
I don't
the
want.
whole
I don't want to
movie.
spoil it, but I'm thinking like that. Like you have this whole orchestrated thing, and everyone's going, "What can we help you with?
Right.
You want to be, like this in your next lifetime? Well, let us just help you.
Right.
Here's the pamphlets for this
Right.
experience.
That's that's what we think. That's really what we think, I think.
Well, okay. So going along with that, what's been interesting, I finally just had an epiphany it's like been cropping up over the past couple of months with my readings, because when I do mediumship, I'm always taken over, to where the individual is residing. And, I kept seeing like this house.
Mhm.
And they're lovely houses, from the outside, but like I would be typically inside with the individual. And it was interesting because I would look up. And if I looked up, there would be no ceiling. And it's like, once my awareness hit there, they would they would fill in like, like it wasn't necessary. Like they wouldn't fill in what the exterior looked like till they opened up the door.
Yeah.
And so, but the rooms shift with the personality of the individual. So I kept thinking, is this a way station? Is this like, is this just where people start to learn to co-create again?
Right.
And it's a lot of those things. But it's also, I'm learning now that that's also a place where my mind can comprehend this space and what they're doing, how, so they're actually kind of co-creating that space with me so that I can relate certain things to the people.
Right.
And it's kind of, I think it's more along the lines of what would be my ideal. It just, anyway, but I mean, it's applying to these people, like everything makes sense to them. Like I remember one time I saw this group who, this guy is leading this Bible study, and I'm like, this is what he's doing. He's bought so into his reality that when you die, you go on as this religious figure. And so he's still preaching to this congregation, very small congregation. And the person's cracking up. I didn't know that he was an alderman. And they're like, yep. He, hellfire and brimstone. And I'm like, and here's something really interesting. All the men are getting up. Like he's showing me how they get up and they go. And like all of a sudden I'm seeing outside, they go fishing.
I think I remember this story.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we told it here.
Oh, okay. And I'm like, they go fishing and the women are making food. They don't have to consume food, but this is their camaraderie and stuff.
Done.
Yeah. It's what they would have done. And I'm like, how cool is, so but I had that epiphany, like we learn, like all of this is just kind of co-creating so that we have an understanding and explanation of the processes.
Right.
It's not that you cross over and all of a sudden you're in front of the screen that shows your life. But I think that does happen, but that's not what they show me.
Right.
Well, Raziel and others have said that you go into this space it's void. There's nothing. It's a void. It's like white. It's just nothing.
Yes. And I get that.
You create whatever you need. And so for us, we have to have a construct for our human mind to understand. So we create those constructs, whether it's a house or whatever it looks like, or we create a construct of what these beings are supposed to look like because they're not in physicality.
Yeah.
Right. I think we have time for one more little tidbit I wanted to share.
A few minutes.
We did a channeling for a group in Kentucky the other day, and the doctor who was running the discussion, he had sent me a list of questions. One of his questions was, are there any overlooked or undervalued, underappreciated nutrients? Okay, so I'm thinking they're going to give us nutrients. What do you want us to know? And they said, the first thing that we need you to know is that your immune system is super important, which means when you get a virus or a cold or the flu or something like that, that is boosting your immune system. So people, stop pushing it away, they said. Stop pushing it away.
Wow.
Stop being mad at yourself for getting a cold. Stop trying to prevent yourself from getting a cold. You use those to upgrade your system and your immune system. And then that is given back out in your breath or whatever, your energy and your breath to Mother Earth. And it helps Mother Earth improve her immune system. It was crazy. I was like, that is not what I expected when we asked about nutrients, but it was health advice. Health advice they wanted to share. And that was the number one. They gave us three things. The second one they said was that Mother Earth is very, very important to, again, your immune system and your health. So get your feet in the ground. And they said it's not just about what nutrients are in the dirt, for example, or something like that. It's also about the energy of Mother Earth penetrating your body. Yes.
And all of that.
Yep.
And the third thing was they did say there are a lot of herbs and spices that are overlooked in their importance. And I do remember them saying cloves and oregano.
Oh my God. Oregano does a lot of stuff.
Right. Oil of oregano. First sign of a cold, you can kind of, if you have a sore throat,
it can be harsh. You got to be really careful how you take it because I screwed up the first time.
Oh no.
I took it straight. I didn't know.
God, that'll burn the heck out of you.
I was I couldn't breathe for the longest time. Yeah. So like research.
We are not doctors.
No,
not doctors.
We do stupid things too.
Figure out how you want to. But typically, when we do oil of oregano, we just put a couple of drops in some water and gargle. I put about 4 drops into a little bit of warm water, swirl it around, and then I gargle with it, and then I swallow that, and it really
I mean, within a couple of days, you can tell that whatever symptoms of a cold, they start to wane very quickly. It takes care of whatever's in the throat. So
My dad, who is a doctor, he used to say, well, if you wait a couple of days, they'll go away anyway.
Right.
I'm just like,
Exactly.
thanks
Good
a lot,
advice.
you know,
Thanks, Dad.
but you want to manage the
Yeah.
symptoms, you know,
and
it's
that's
kind
really
of-
what it's about. Yeah.
It was interesting when I pulled up today, speaking of how, you know, Mother Earth does this stuff for you. You know, I'd had the drive, I was tired, I'd get out of my car, I'm walking up to the treehouse, and this breeze comes and hits me. And I just was energized. Like it was the coolest thing. It was just like this kiss or this warm wrapping around or whatever it was. It was just like, oh my God, I
Awesome.
felt so good. And I literally stood
beautiful.
out there. I thought, God, if they're looking down at me, they're going to be like, what is she
What
going
is she
on
doing
about?
down
Yeah.
there?
Cause I was just like, oh my God, this feels so good.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, this was fun. I think we do need to make this a part of our regular routine. If you guys like the stream of consciousness where we just cover a whole bunch of different things, let us know.
Our banter.
And we so appreciate you as always. Leave
Yes.
us comments or suggestions or whatever you want to see us, because it's been a year and sometimes we do kind of run out of topics.
Yeah. Put them in the comments.
Yeah.
We'll
What do you want
we'll-
more of?
we'll cover 'em.
But at any rate, we thank you so much for spending time with us here on Out on a Limb podcast. Until next time, take good care.
Bye.
See you guys.